I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. I'm Lynda Norman, and I'm a watercolor artist in the beautiful province of British Columbia. Today, we're heading over to the vignette to take a look at what we can control and what we can't. A little bit of a different setup today. I have a little camera buddy beside my left shoulder, and Lorenz and I have been doing a little playing around with angles and things, so hopefully you'll see things a little differently. And we're going to approach something in a little more depth when it comes to vignettes. We've often talked about water and the relationship between the water and the pigment, so important. And I thought today we would just take another little in-depth look at how the water can move your pigments around the page without much intervention from you. I recently heard someone say painting with watercolor is like riding a kayak. Riding a kayak? Is that what you call it? I don't know. Anyway, you can control where the kayak goes, but you can't control the water. So that kind of, if you keep that in your mind, the water's there, you can have a little bit of control over that. And I think the rest of the time, for me anyway, is just having fun and letting those pigments and the water play around. If you can step back from wanting that perfectionist, angle or line that you may think that needs to be there, and just let the paper and the water and the pigment do what they want to do, you might be surprised. So I'm going to wet my paints, my Daniel Smith paints, and I've got a couple of granulating ones in the side palette here. And some lavender. We'll see if those come into play. For my vignettes, typically I just love the richness of my Daniel Smith Mayan dark blue, undersea green, and quinacridone gold. They play so well together. And today I've added some new fresh pigment to this palette. It's Rose of Ultramarine. So it's a beautiful purple. It's actually quinacridone rose and ultramarine blue combined. So it's already done for me, so that's handy. And I might even add a little bit of that purple in. So I've wetted my paints. As I say, my quinacridone, or my Rose of Ultramarine, is fresh in the palette. So it's going to be wet and sticky. And I just topped up my Mayan dark blue, so it's going to be wet and sticky as well. So I want to keep that in mind. I don't want to be dipping in too far because I'm going to get that sticky, wet tube paint on the tip of my brush. So I will wet the surface just so hopefully it will wake up enough of what's on the surface there for me to just touch in a little tiny bit. So with vignettes, the way I like to create them, I use a spray bottle with an adjustable nozzle. That allows me to control the spray and the heaviness and the amount of the droplets that come out. If I was to use my spray mister, I would get more full coverage and I wouldn't get the droplets that are important to this style of painting, and the droplets are what sort of lead where my pigments are going to go. Sometimes I nudge them a little bit, but that's that's my prerogative, right? It's my painting. So with one of these little bottles, I'm going to just test it over here. I want to pull it. That's not. Whoops. There. I just want it turned on enough so that it can spurtle out. I call it spurtling. I don't know if anybody can actually see that. And then I hold the bottle at a bit of an angle so that when the spray comes out, it comes up and it drops onto the page. So I'm just going to, I'm not going to cover the entire page. And often when I do this, I think of a shape ahead of time. I've done them in the shapes of L's and B's and, letters of my grandkids, first names and that kind of thing. But I just like to make water droplets sort of all over the page this time, because then I'll determine as I'm going, I'll lay out my plan. With vignettes, with all my landscapes. In fact, I just don't. I don't paint from reference unless it's a commission. I find that a bit restricting, so I like to sort of plan as I go. So I think I've got enough water on there for the moment. There's some bigger droplets down at the bottom. That'll come in handy, pardon me, for the rocks and the different things that I might want to add later. I'm going to use one of my Lebenson Goat synthetic blend brushes, 1.5 inch bristles. And I'm just going to wait for my paints to wake up for about another 10 seconds. I like to start with the Mayan dark blue just because it's such a beautiful granulating color and it does flow with the water. I'm sure you could use any darker blue or any blue. I mean, it's your painting. You can do what you want. I prefer the darker, richer tones, more gray blues, the cooler blues. Maybe, perhaps, hard to say. It's up to you. It's your painting. And I mean, I always have a little test piece on the side, so you can test whether it's going to granulate or move the way you think it might in your big piece. So I just want to touch the tip of my brush into that paint, just on the tip. I'm not going to saturate and load my whole brush. And I get sitting at the angle where I can see the water droplets. And I'm just going to drop a bit of that off the edge because it's, as I said, it's pretty rich and thick. And I'm just going to touch it into those water drops. And sometimes, you know, I don't mind, with the tip of this little beautiful fine brush, I don't mind encouraging those water drops to move off to the side maybe a little more. I will take, often there's no droplets in this area here, so I'm going to take this line and I'm just going to hook it up to a droplet. You could draw a tree trunk, but I find that if you're looking at a tree in nature, you don't often see the whole trunk running down, and that sometimes can be distracting for your painting rather. And trees are irregular. They are pretty random sometimes, you know, and I like to keep my branches sort of off to one's, you know, offset more than anything. And your trees can be little and scruffy. They can have fluffier branches. And you can shape them as you go. Now this is a process where you do want to be fairly quick, because if your droplets do dry, if you respray, you're going to reactivate the paints that are already laid down and doing their, you know, their shapes and their forms. All right. So there's one tree. I can always come back and fill in a bit more, I suppose, if I wanted to. I'm going to move on now, and I'm going to move to another section of droplets, probably just slightly to the right of that first tree. And again, just dropping some color into those little water droplets and encouraging them to move out to the side a tiny bit. I don't care that this is a drop on its own, because when I go to make my next tree, pardon me, I can probably combine that. If not, it will become part of a background. So I'm going to continue across the page now, just gently adding a few more trees. I'm not going to fill in all the water drops because I want to leave room for other colors. So I'm going to, I think, maybe come in at about center and maybe a bit lower because I don't want my trees to always be the same height. And you can see here where the water is just moving those just droplets of pigment. And I've got this tree kind of crooked. I might just move up and make this tree more in line with that top there. And then this will be an indication of a tree in behind. I think that's all we need there. And then I think, just for balance, I'm going to move on to this side, and I'm going to put one or two trees here. I've got 3 and one in the background on this side. I like to keep things a little bit balanced. You don't want them to be necessarily really symmetrical. So I'm going to move on to this side of the page now, and at a different level, because I want to indicate that, you know, things are mountainous and moving a little bit. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to see, I can see now the page is actually, pardon me, buckling. This is 100% cotton, 140 pound. This one is a block of Bauhang Masters. I'm just going to flip it over so you can see the Bauhang Masters paper. Beautiful, beautiful, nice, rough texture cold press paper, but it does buckle. So the paper is buckling. So now my water droplets have sort of merged together where the buckles have forced that to happen. So there we have a situation where things have shifted, things have changed. So again, we're not going to control what's happening there. That has happened on its own with the paper. The paper and the water have decided that things are going to be a little bit different. So there again, we can just add in our pigments and watch what happens. And I think we'll put maybe just one a little bit taller on this side, and then we'll be done with the blue. And that's probably enough there for now. So while things are still wet and damp, I'm going to go back to this side. I like to work from left to right. And I'm going to go in with the undersea green. You'll notice that the Mayan dark blue is sort of diffusing in some places where the pigment's heavier, it's darker. Those are the things you can control. You can add more pigment, you can make it darker. You can let some of the areas just diffuse out to their nice, soft, subtle colors once they've mixed with the water. But as for the rest of it, I mean, you can sort of control where you put your water drops. Once they come out of that little nozzle, they kind of will land where they want to. That's the beauty of it for me. I can work with what's there. I can create with what's on the page without worrying too much about any preconceived notions or ideas. So I'm in with my undersea green, and it's the same process. Just touching the tip of my brush in, and I don't mind that I'm coming into some water droplets that had a little bit of Mayan blue in them. They can blend together on the page. They join in and become sort of background, right? If I sit back, I can take a look at some of the water droplets that are left on the page and continue to just create some of these little wonky trees. Now it's drying out here a bit more, and again, I can't control a lot of that. I can dip in here where there's a bit of a pool and maybe just encourage some of that to move out and join some of my green with it. You don't need a lot of the other colors, the secondary colors, but then it's up to you. Like I say, if you want to add more depth, more deep pigment, it would be interesting, I suppose, to put a lot of colors in. Not my preference when it comes to how things look in the end. I prefer something a little less complicated and complex. And so I like my trees, the branches to be more, more horizontal looking and draping down a bit. Some people like their trees to sort of branch in the upward direction, and I've noticed there are some varieties of trees that do that. Again, these are your trees, so you can make them look however you want. I'm just going to go back in now to this area here where there was more water and just include a little more pigment. And this is the part that you can control. You can decide how much darkness and how much lightness you want to put in. This is loose and intuitive and allowing the pigments and the water to do what they need to do. Again, you know, if you don't come in with an idea of exactly how this needs to look, it can evolve as we go along. I'm going to move over and do a little bit of green on this side of the page now. And I think some of these droplets of water are sort of spreading out, and they're getting kind of puddly. So I'm going to make sure that I add heavier pigment to those areas, just because I know it's going to move around a little bit more. You can use the side of your brush to sort of scumble things together here and there. I noticed in this part here I had some branches that were kind of looking like a ladder shape. I didn't really want that, so I'm just going to go in there and scumble that around and maybe just make another tree shape beside it. And maybe just one more here. These brushes are great for that. Any fine point brush, a rigger, anything like that, where you can pick up a nice little load of paint and then just work it onto your page, are beautiful for this kind of painting. I like to keep my trees, like I said, very uneven. So some are taller, some are shorter. This one here, the water has sort of pulled the pigment up because the page is buckled, so it's going to move up and over that little bump in the page, and that's okay. I don't mind that. That's got a little bit of an interesting texture to it, and while it's still a bit damp, I can go in with heavier pigment and just make a couple of more strong lines. And I'm going to use the side of my brush here just to bring out a little tiny bit of the pigment, and there are some water droplets here, so it's when it connects it kind of flows down. And we'll put a little bit of green on this side just so that tree, you know, these trees aren't floating in the air. All right, so I'm going to touch just with the side of my brush about maybe halfway, just laid it into the undersea green pigment. And this page is starting to dry now, so this is sort of almost like a dry brushing effect, and I'm just touching it on the page and pulling it up just to fill in a little bit so that we've got a sense of some grounding, some basis for these trees to be happening. Now as I sit back, I can see there is a water droplet there. And I think I'm just going to stick with the green at this point. I'm going to go back to this side of the page for a moment. And I just want to encourage a couple of those drops to become just another tree shape in the background there. There's a droplet there. And you don't have to use every drop, of course. But I can't resist using a lot of them because each one produces a different tree shape, right? All right. I don't mind leaving a little bit of white in the background for the sky coming through. And I don't often put a sky in. You could certainly afterwards. If you were to put a sky in first, like with a wash, and then you did your droplets, you're going to get blossoms and blooms and things happening on that. So adding your paint colors ahead of time for a sky aren't great for this kind of setup. You could go in with the side of your brush afterwards and just sort of scuffle in some light grays or blues or whatever you wanted for a sky if you felt that was necessary. But I don't think at this point I'm going to worry about that. Now I've got these sort of centered. I usually try not to do that, but that's okay. I'm not going to add more droplets to the top, but I think I will probably just pop in with, and I said I'm going to try the Rose of Ultramarine. Let's give that a go. Let's see what that does for us. And this is just for accents. I'm not going to add a lot, but I want to kind of blend that in from the side, just with the side of my brush, adding a little bit of that just for a continuation along the side of the page. I'm going to go back to the other side of the page now, just for balance, and I'm going to bring that Rose of Ultramarine just in for a couple of accent pieces. They don't have to be the same shaped trees as what I've been doing. They can be, you know, little bushes. I'm just going to touch my brush. I just touched my brush into my water, just the tip. I didn't swish the whole brush in. I just wanted a little bit of water just to make my paints. And actually what I'm going to do is dip into my palette because there's some spatter drops there. And that's all I need, just to bring in a little bit of color. And there we have that. With the addition of a little bit of, pardon me, quinacridone gold. Now I've washed my brush, and it's fairly wet still. I didn't dry it off a lot. And I'm going to dip into my quinacridone gold just a little bit, as I did with the others. Now with the quinacridone gold, if you remember, and if you use it, you'll know that it pushes away, it moves things around. So I'm going to just give it a little bit of a chance to enhance the color on this page. And where things are still wet, you will see where the quinacridone gold is just going to sort of mellow in and settle in and create some beautiful highlights. I like to touch the quinacridone gold rather, yes, into areas where that Rose of Ultramarine is. The colors side by side are so complementary, and they almost create a brownish tone, which is, you know, complementary to the earthiness of these kind of paintings, for me anyway. And so every place where I've touched the Rose of Ultramarine, I'm just going to go in and just give the slightest hint of the quinacridone gold. And I might even put a little bit up there just to sort of tie in some of the colors. If you can see here where the colors, all of them have melded. The Mayan dark blue, the ultramarine green, the undersea green, the Rose of Ultramarine, and the quinacridone gold. And they create these incredible, soft, muted blends that, I don't know, for me that's just an incredible bit of magic that happens. So I think for now, I'm going to leave this part of the painting, and I'm going to work down now into the bottom part, which actually becomes more of the vignette style. Now I've painted out to the edge here. I don't often do that, but I like to sort of let the edges go soft. Now there's still some wet drops in the bottom, and that's great. I'm just going to go in with my wet brush, nice and drippy loaded, and I'm just going to add some splashes and splashes. I just want things to start being more fluid looking, and we may even tip the page. We're going to add a bit more heavy pigment. This is the Mayan dark blue again. And if I push that up against some of that color happening there, I will get some interesting shapes. And by tilting the paper just slightly, what am I going to put under there? I'm just going to set a brush under my pad, just a little bit so that it's not even straight. That's not going to work. There we go. Just so that it's at a bit of an angle, let gravity do some of the work. Okay. Now I love how this is all coming down. The granulation of the paint is working with the water, and I can encourage some of these lines if I don't want them to end quite the way they do. And these can be indicative of tree roots or just shadows, even shapes and things happening. And I'm wanting to just add a little bit of the blue in these areas here, perhaps, just so that I can tie things in. Leave a little bit of white on the page, which is always beautiful. I've got some very heavy pigment happening there. If I was to just add a bit of water, we may have to tilt the page a bit more. So I'm just going to grab a paper towel and collect some of that off off the edge. And while that is doing its magic down here, just going to add a bit more water, I think, on that. I'm going to go back in with a semi-dry brush. I've wetted it, I've cleaned it, and I've just taken the excess water off with my paper towel. And I just want to go in here and there. If I see some edges that are a bit harsh, and I can feather them up and encourage them to become a part of that top area. I don't want to interfere with that because I think that's extremely lovely. And if there's lines that don't look like there was a scoop there where the water had sort of taken its own initiative, I can control that. I can tell that to go somewhere else. The rest of it, I'm quite happy to let the water and the pigment do what they need to do. When I'm dabbing up, I'm barely touching the page. You just want your paper to be a wick, your paper towel rather. Watercolor, as much as, you know, when you're watching somebody paint, sometimes it looks like they're pretty slap happy, and it can look that way, but it's really, for me, a gentle process. I don't hit the paper hard unless I'm, you know, having a need for something unusual. And I like to use my brush as a tool to just introduce the pigment to the water on the paper. I don't want to be scrubbing. I don't want to be doing a lot of extra work. I want to basically be an observer a lot of the time to what my pigments and my water and my paper are going to do for me. And just sitting and being patient and watching can be just absolutely magical. One of the things that I've done in the past is incorporated other methods, other concepts into doing these. You could, while this is still damp, you could take plastic wrap and crumple it up and lay it in certain areas so you get a different effect. You can take your plastic tab and create rocks. And that's, for me, that's something that, you know, I find that this is really fun to do, especially with these colors. They tend to really work well together. So I'm just adjusting, I'm nudging, I'm encouraging, I'm looking at the shapes and how things have evolved. And I'm just encouraging with the tip of my brush, very gently, encouraging the pigment in the water sometimes to go in a little bit of a different direction, things that please my eye. So if something pleases your eye, then by all means, jump in there and sort of like, you be the coach, you know, gently nudge it around until it gets to the point where it feels like it's working for you. Like I say, these are your paintings. Now I see here I've got something here. It could be a bird. I'm not really a bird person. I love birds, but I don't always like to incorporate them into my paintings. So I might just take that pigment and try to remove it, or just softly sort of blend it out into nowhere there. That's what I think that's what we'll do. Make that a little bit of a shadowy inlet in the valley. So with my little plastic tab, if I was to put rocks in, I don't want to interfere with these beautiful lines and things that are happening, the organic granulation. So I'm going to go over to this side of the page, the right side of the page, and I'm just going to sort of find a place where I think would be maybe a natural shoreline or a place for landfall. And I'm not going to be extra strong with the rocks here today. I just want to add just the indication of a couple of them. Okay. The rest can fall down. And then if I come to this side, I probably will only want to do, again, just a couple here. This one I might have wanted to have turned my page around a little bit, but that's okay. I kind of just want them to be subtle. And I think that's probably all I would do to this one. I can see there's still some wet drops up there. I'm not going to worry about those. You know, the water showed up there, but it's not something I wanted to incorporate. Take a photo of it, sit back, relax, take a couple of minutes. You don't have to finish it all in 20 minutes. Take your time, but you do want to finish it at one go. I wouldn't go back once it's dry and try to add too much. This one here, I just see where it's not really that wet, but I'm just going to encourage and try to create more of a tree shape for this little fellow here. There we go. So while your page has still got droplets, you can work with them. Mainly with the tip of your brush, sometimes with the side of your brush. Play around. If you keep a scrap piece beside you, you can try some brush strokes, side strokes, tip strokes, and go from there. But I think with these beautiful colors, the way things have come together, I'm pretty happy with the overall effect. We nudged where we could, where it was appropriate. Let the water and the pigment do what they needed to do in other areas. Watch things blend and move on the page, and I think that we've got quite a gorgeous example of how pigments and water can just do magical things for you. I'd like to thank the Process Art Discovery audience for joining me today. We spent a bit of time watching water and pigment do their magic on the page for a little vignette. If you like what you've seen, please subscribe to the channel or head on over to the members area.